Now, the UK is now £799 billion in debt. According to the latest figures, government borrowing has soared to the highest level since records began.
Last month, the government borrowed £13 billion, twice as much as a year ago after the downturn shrank tax receipts.
The Chancellor's forecast that this financial year's borrowing will total £175 billion.
The Office for National Statistics says the UK's overall net debt now stands at nearly £800 billion, equivalent to more than half of our gross domestic product.
Well, let's talk about those figures. With me in the studio is Colin Ellis, an economist at the investment bank Daewoo Securities SMBC. Thanks for coming in. Eye-watering figures. We're getting used to them, though. What do you think about them?
Well, at face value, they were a pretty appalling set of figures. I mean, £13 billion on the month is roughly about £210 for every man, woman and child in the UK. But despite that, there were one or two glimmers of hope in the underlying data.
What were the underlying glimmers of hope?
Well, on the first hand, when the Chancellor published his budget forecasts back in April, many of us in the city didn't believe him. We thought that even though £175 billion was a very big number, it might not be big enough. And the detail of today's release suggests that maybe he's still just about on course to meet that forecast over this financial year. The second glimmer of hope was really around the tax receipts. As you've mentioned, they've collapsed quite a lot over the past year, but there are some signs that maybe that pace of decline is just starting to bottom out a little bit.
And are you confident that it is sustainable? At this stage, how much can we read into month-on-month figures, which do seem so volatile?
So the month-on-month figures can be very volatile indeed, but with the economy showing signs of bottoming out, you'd expect probably tax receipts to bottom out maybe a little bit behind because you've got unemployment rising after the growth has resumed. But fundamentally, it's not sustainable from the point of view of the public finances being in such a large hole over a sustained period of time.
Do you have any concerns about the government being able to continue finding people willing to finance the debt?
Well, thus far, there seems to be relatively little sign of a kind of buyer's strike in the market.
The government's been buying a lot of its own debt, though, hasn't it?
Well, the Bank of England has stepped in to buy lots of debt. That's a different thing from the government doing it directly. And their aim is to kind of prevent deflation and stimulate the economy. In terms of the private buyers in the market, because a bank cannot buy directly from the government, there is still quite a bit of demand out there, and the DMO has been quite successful, for example, with its syndicated offerings so far.
I mean, inevitably, some will talk of the danger of this country at some stage running the risk of going to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout. Do you think that we are in that sort of boat?
I don't think we're in that boat at the moment, because I think what will happen after the election, whoever wins, is you will see tax rises and you'll see spending cuts in order to bring the public finances back onto track.
OK. Colin Ellis, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was one of the first orders given by Barack Obama